Vlog Cameras 101. So thanks so much for coming. If you want to say hi in the chat, say what city you're in. That would be awesome. You don't have to. Um, Tony, I don't hear an echo. That might be something on your audio. Now, this is a webinar, so you are very welcome to put questions in the Q&A box. And all of my panelists, please feel free to answer questions in the Q&A as we go along. We're going to do something kind of new and different. Tonight, we are going to have what we are calling a fishbowl conversation. We have a lot of panelists, and in order to kind of share around the conversation, we're going to have two people talking at once, and they're going to kind of tag in and tag out of the conversation. So really welcome you here. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. I'm not going to do questions from the attendees right now because there's too much going on for that. But we're very, very glad you're here, and we hope that you're going to learn a lot. And I can see from the chat that we have folks from all over Ohio, which is super exciting. So we are going to get started. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. We're going to learn a lot about flock cameras tonight, but it's just going to be an introduction. My name's Mia Lewis. I'm with Common Cause Ohio. And I just wanted to say, technology was supposed to free us and unite us. But as we're going to see this evening, it seems instead that it's oppressing us and dividing us. And, the folks, the corporate bosses and the politicians aren't necessarily looking out for our personal safety and our personal liberty and the personal safety and liberty of all kinds of different people in, our society. And so it's really kind of fallen on us, both as organizations and as individuals, to figure out what is going on and what we can do about it. And so in this introduction, I really do hope that you are able to, learn a little bit about flock cameras, but also learn what you can do about the situation, how you can engage in your community, learn from some of the other things that have happened around Ohio, and actually take action. And we're going to leave you with ways to take action and with resources. And with that, I am going to, here's our agenda. And I'm going to spotlight our speaker, Gary Daniels from the ACLU of Ohio. I know you have slides, so it's a little harder to see you. I'm also going to spotlight myself. So the two of us now are in the fishbowl, Gary. Tell us about flock cameras. What are they all about?
Yes, thank you, Mia. Thank you to Common Cause for putting this together. Thank you to all of my co-panelists here. And thank you all for attending on what I think is probably a sunny Monday evening across Ohio. Tuned in to learn more about surveillance and privacy makes you my kind of people. I've been with you. I'm the legislative director at the ACLU of Ohio. I started way back in 1995 doing this work. Pre 9/11, post 9/11, so I've seen kind of the whole world of government surveillance in the digital world, and this is the moment that those of us who have been working on this for a long time have been waiting for. That is, a lot of people very interested in these issues, in doing great work around Ohio. So I hope to learn just as much as the rest of you about what's going on around Ohio with grassroots victories and efforts. Now, Mia started this off, in case you weren't there, saying, look, folks, this is a 101 type presentation. We're not going to be sounding like we're reading from law review articles or quoting court decisions or anything like this. This is all basically a program set up for those of you wondering what's going on with flock and automatic license plate readers around the country and around the state. I'd like to learn more, but again, without getting too into the weeds. So with that, I will say that Flock, of course, is the company that has been attracting a lot of attention with regard to automatic license plate readers. But so that everybody knows, because there is a little bit of confusion out there, Flock is a brand name. It's like saying Kleenex instead of tissue, or you're going to Xerox something instead of photocopying something. It's a brand name that has sort of turned into shorthand for the device, the technology, the product itself. And I'm sure Flock is the most thrilled about that, because why would you not be thrilled about that as the corporation or the business? But automatic license plate readers really aren't that hard to understand. They're basically high-speed cameras that take pictures, images of license plates as you pass through a city or a county or the state, or even if you're parked there. They can be used for a wide variety of different purposes, and they don't capture just the license plate, but they, obviously, if they're capturing your license plate in your car in motion or parked, it's also collecting the date, the time, and the location of your vehicle as well, and that can tell government authorities an awful lot about who you are and what you do in ways that should make civil libertarians, at least at very minimum, uncomfortable. And I should also preface all of this by saying you're not going to get the ACLU comfortable with this type of technology. If we could wave a civil liberties magic wand and have it go away, we would. But if we're dealing with the current reality that these are spreading across Ohio like wildfire, and what it is that we do about all of this. So as mentioned, it collects a lot of different information about ourselves. Quite simply, if they wanted to set up cameras somewhere or everywhere strategically situated around a city or a county or some other defined area, they could be able to tell, well, do you go to political rallies or meetings? Where do you worship at? Are you getting mental health or physical health care? Are you going to the gun store? Are you going to the gun show? Are you going to the political rally? And on and on. And so just our daily whereabouts, where we go, what we do, the government can figure out an awful lot about us. And it's not just the government that's using automatic license plate readers. This is also being used by private entities as well. It continues to spread. And so you have parking lots using them, just, tracking who's going in and out of a parking lot. Car repossession people have been using them to track down cars that they wish to quite literally repossess and put on the tow truck and get out of there before anybody can figure out what's going on. And again, they could be strategically situated in a way that tracks us wherever we go, especially if you start talking about combining these types of technologies, which is where we are and where we are heading, and where you could be talking about quite literally a drone using automatic license plate reader technology. So suffice to say, there will be more and better technology on the way that at some point might even make automatic license plate readers seem a little quaint. But we're dealing again with the current realities as they are right now. Mia, can you go to the next slide there? All right. So the important thing that I want to emphasize before we get to our co-panelists here for tonight's event is there's really almost no state or local laws governing the use of automatic license plate readers, or for that matter, any of the other type of technologies that keep civil libertarians up at night, like, as I mentioned, drones, facial recognition, cell phone location information technology, all these wide variety of things. So the one area where there is some level of regulation at the state level is with Ohio's public records laws, where it says that the data that's captured, the individual whereabouts of where you are going, in fact, is not available via public record. Now, ACLU, we're champions of open government and transparency in public records, but we always see it as it's to keep an eye on the government. What we don't want, at least with the ACLU, is people filing public records requests with local authorities so they can, follow around, determine the whereabouts of an ex-spouse or an ex-lover or somebody they want revenge against, or anything along those lines. So we are happy with the exemption from Ohio's public records laws, but we are not happy that it goes unregulated with regard to almost every other aspect of automatic license plate readers. And I have there on the slide there, if you were to pass a law, whether at the local level or the state level, governing or regulating automatic license plate readers, we think at the ACLU it should include at least these 4 key points. Number one, what can they be used for versus when can they specifically not be used? So as sort of mentioned before implicitly, protected First Amendment activities, we think is a pretty low-hanging fruit with regard to how automatic license plate readers should not be used. Because what you don't want are the authorities going through the parking lot or nearby of where there might be a political protest or rally and just cataloging everybody's license plates and other information as they go along. And again, this is an issue for everybody, that everybody has some skin in this game. So some people are concerned about abortion implications, some about immigration, some about worship. Muslim community obviously concerned about this, but also, again, I use the examples of gun stores and gun shows, and that's where you get situations like that, or where you get people who tend to be on the right side of the political spectrum having concerns about this as well. Number two, how long can the data be kept for and what purposes? The key to not having any further expansion of the surveillance state that we are currently under is to have data retention policies that say, hey, look, if you need it for an actual criminal investigation of a person or persons, then of course we understand you're going to hold on to that data. But if you don't need it for those purposes, get rid of it as soon as possible. So again, that helps protect against the further encroachment of a surveillance state. Number three, very much related to number two, who can that data be shared with and under what circumstances? So we already know this data gets shared with, other law enforcement agencies here in Ohio, other law enforcement agencies across the country, and the federal government as well. Whether it's ICE or the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, DEA, so on and so forth. There's a wide variety of people that have access to this information that, again, data retention policy could help take care of a fair amount of that, or at least I'd like to think, combined with number three. And number four, sort of the cherry on top, required audits and reporting to the public on how they have been used, how often, for what purposes, ideally, did they lead to convictions, things of that nature. So I think, in shorthand, that's kind of like the 4 bullet points of what we think should be, again, in any local or state law governing and regulating this type of technology. And again, it applies not to just automatic license plate readers, but other surveillance technology of this type. But look, folks, I rant and complain about this stuff all the time. You don't need to hear any more from me tonight. You've got a bunch of great panelists here who have been doing actual hard work there at the local levels to get their elected officials and others, their neighbors, to take notice of this and do work on it. So I'm going to turn this over to Bryn Adams from the Cleveland area there.
Wait, I want to ask you a couple of questions
Oh,
first.
yeah. Sorry,
But
sorry.
that's a great idea. She's coming up in a second. I
I
mean,
thought I was getting off light. All right.
well, no, I might just ask you a couple questions. So, I mean, you may have said this, but just reiterate for me, who actually owns the data?
Mhm. Yeah, that's it belongs to the actual person that's generating the data. So, in the case of Cleveland or the case of some other city or something, it is their data, but in a sense, it is also Flock's data. And I don't want to get, again, too into the weeds. We just had a Supreme Court decision today that touches on some of these issues with regard to surveillance technology. And, again, I don't want to get into the weeds. This isn't the type of presentation for this, but there's a real struggle in the courts over the decades. It's called the third party doctrine. Essentially, it says if you turn over information to some other party, the phone company, the bank, what have you, you don't have a privacy interest anymore. After all, you've given it up in order to complete the transaction or purchase the product or whatever. So if anybody's got a complaint or legal standing to sue over something, it would be the telecommunications company or the bank or what have you. You individual, Mia Lewis, you've got no privacy interest in that data. But automatic license plate readers, I think, kind of walk kind of a tightrope, kind of a hybrid of that. But ultimately, the information belongs to the city and so, or the county or the state or whomever. And so if you do want to find out more information about how this type of technology works, what they're using it for, the contracts, all of that, it is available via Ohio's public records laws, although I know some people have had problems and denials of public records requests, including at the ACLU of Ohio, trying to track down more information in some areas.
And Gary, you said you started working on this pre 9/11. So when were the first cameras like this? When did they first come? And then, if you were to draw a chart, how exponentially is the number of flock cameras growing? Kind of where are we at the moment?
Yeah, it's I started doing this work about the same time that the internet became a thing. When I started, there was not email in offices. You couldn't email each other. I would ride my dinosaur to work, and then we would talk to each other over the phone. But as soon as the world started to get digitized, you started to get these very serious privacy concerns of what's being done with all this data, monitoring the internet, censoring certain speech on the internet. And then, of course, I think no surprise to an awful lot of people, once 9/11 happened in 2001, then you just saw like really this onslaught of both surveillance devices and technology, and an even greater desire than there had been in decades before of the government wanting to know more and more about people, to catalog that data, to keep it. And so, I can remember very clearly, because I've been in Columbus about 18 years or so. This was when I still worked on our Cleveland office, getting my very first call about 20 years ago about automatic license plate readers. And it was framed as they're putting a few of these up at a couple highway exits in Ohio to track stolen cars where there's a history of stolen cars traveling, essentially. And well, what do you think, ACLU? It's like, well, it's not going to stop there, was my response, because it never does. And we're going to, at some point, see these cameras being used everywhere for all kinds of things. And here we are. And so
Yeah.
we continue to see this technology spread, although, again, we've had some victories in a variety of areas, but it continues to spread, especially when the federal government is kicking in money for something such as, COVID relief, things of that nature.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I am now going to add in Bryn. I'm going to leave. And I'm just going to remind folks, put your questions in the Q&A box. And also, panelists, if you want to answer any of the questions in the Q&A, you are more than welcome. All right.
And here's the better part of tonight's program, where you get to hear again from people doing the work on the local scenes there, and racking up victories. And so, Bryn, you're in Cleveland there. I'm going to ask you a sort of a series of questions, all kind of contained in one question, about wanting to know more about what's going on. But essentially, how did your effort, who are you working with? How did these efforts start in Cleveland? What exactly have you accomplished since you started? And what are some of the lessons learned, or some things that would be of interest to other people watching this, hoping to learn more and copy your efforts or modify your efforts in their own local communities? And with that, I'm going to shrink into the background here. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Excuse me. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. My name is Bryn. I'm a freelance writer and illustrator, and I'm one of the residents involved in Flock No, which is a grassroots campaign against Flock here in Cleveland, Ohio. Um, let's see. So, how did our campaign begin? So, I should say first that Cleveland has had a contract with Flock for 100 automated license plate readers since 2023. Our campaign started last fall when a Cleveland City Council member left his seat to take a public affairs job with Flock. And 3 weeks later, the city tried to authorize a $2 million no-bid contract with them. And this new contract would have expanded Cleveland's relationship with Flock to include their gunshot detection technology as well as ALPRs. So at the time, there were a few of us, really just like a group of friends and neighbors, who were primarily concerned about this revolving door effect between Cleveland city government and Flock. And we got together and threw together an open letter opposing the contract expansion, circulated that. That letter rapidly received hundreds of resident signatures, and our effort ultimately got enough media attention and public outcry that the mayoral administration backed off and tabled the $2 million expansion. So that was sort of the big initial win earlier this year. After that initial win, through the open letter, we had identified a really broad base of folks with a lot of different politics, all of whom were fired up about this issue specifically, who wanted to keep pushing back against surveillance in our city. So we started meeting and talking about what came next and really just like learning and doing research. And we learned that Cleveland's ALPR contract would be coming up for renewal in June, today, in fact. So we decided that our next push was going to be to ask the city to not renew the contract and remove all ALPR technology from our streets. So that's really what we've spent the last 6 months doing. We've been holding community meetings and educational sessions. We've been submitting public records requests, and we've been mobilizing folks to show up and put pressure on our local elected representatives. Um, and I would say in a lot of ways we've been really successful. I think getting the contract expansion shelved late last year was a great start. There was then a big procedural fight around how the contract was going to get renewed. I don't want to get in the weeds, but essentially, the mayor wanted to use a loophole in the city code to unilaterally renew the contract. And we were able to mount enough pressure that it became politically infeasible for him to do so. And eventually, he asked City Council to handle the contract renewal instead. So that was another win, moving things from this sort of administrative channel to a more democratic space. Um, then, when the fight moved to City Council, we repeatedly mobilized dozens of people to attend meetings at City Hall and do public comment. And on June 17th, the Safety Committee of City Council voted against renewing the flock contract. And so that means that as of today, the contract expires and Cleveland should be flock free. However, that being said, the fight very much continues. Our city council president is determined to keep the flock contract alive and is planning to bring it back for another vote sometime in the next couple months. Just a cute little do-over, since he didn't get the outcome he wanted. Flock, we learned just this evening, is giving our police department a grace period to keep the cameras operational until that time. So our next fight is to first get the cameras covered up, like our comrades in Dayton have successfully achieved. So we definitely want to make that happen, and then kill the contract and get this tech out of our city once and for all. And then I think the last question was just like interesting things that I've learned doing this work. Um, there are so many things. I did not know that much about this issue before this campaign started. But I think honestly, one of the most important things I've learned to me is I've just really come to believe that these systems are insecure and prone to abuse in fundamentally unfixable ways. And respectfully, Gary, I'd say that most of our team actually disagrees with the ACLU, that the solution to Fox abuses is to pass guardrail legislation. I think most of us feel that that kind of policy ultimately enshrines the use of an incredibly invasive and deeply problematic technology. And so we want to fight to get them banned and eliminated altogether. Um, so that's one thing that I feel I've learned. Another really alarming learning for me has been all of the totally obscure and undemocratic ways in which this technology is deployed. Um, the initial installation of flock ALPRs in Cleveland was paid for by a state grant. The annual contract was approved via an IT procurement ordinance that did not mention flock by name at all. And since 2023, the contract has been renewed through this loophole in the city code that I mentioned. So there's very little public awareness that it even exists. Similarly, late last year, the city started using Flock's drones as first responder technology without any public input or discussion. So we see this pattern over and over and over again, and it's really by design. They know this technology is unpopular and ineffective and incredibly invasive, so they try to hide it from us. And I think in a lot of ways, the most important part of this work right now is just helping people to understand how much of this infrastructure has been put into place without our consent, why it presents such a danger to all of us, and how we can begin to fight back against it. So that's the
Thank you
situation
so
in
much.
Cleveland.
We are out of time on there. So Gary, I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to take your spotlight off. I'm going to add a spotlight for Katie as soon as I can. Add spotlight, take Gary out, and welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Katie. Good to see you.
Hi, Bryn. Congrats on
Um,
that great advocacy.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, congrats to y'all as well. I would love to just have you introduce yourself and then maybe start by talking about how community advocacy around Flock in Dayton got started.
Sure. So my name's Katie Kersh. I am an attorney with Advocates for Basic Legal Equality, or ABLE. I'm based out of Dayton. We're a nonprofit that provides free legal services to low-income individuals, and I lead our immigration practice group. We work with immigrants and agricultural workers. And so, first of all, thanks very much to Common Cause and others for hosting tonight. I'm very honored to get to be here and hear all of these amazing and inspiring stories. Because a lot of what I feel right now is frustration. But to get to, which I'll talk about in a second, but to get to your question, Bryn, so we originally, a group of community advocates, along with ABLE, got together in 2020. And this kind of addresses some of the questions in the chat about funding. So what Flock likes to do is they like to give police departments pilot programs for free. And they sell them they sell them on these cameras by giving them to them for free. And then the Attorney General's office likes to give them grants and says, well, we'll give this to you for ALPRs or for surveillance technology. So they get kind of hooked on this technology because they get it without having to use taxpayer dollars at first. But we were interested because they were putting them up in a predominantly Latinx part of town, and folks were feeling very targeted. And so we engaged with the city commission, with some supporters on the city commission in Dayton for advocacy, and had an oversight ordinance passed that provided a ton of safeguards. And when the Flock contract, when Dayton Police Department presented the Flock contract to the city commission in 2023, they had an entire safeguard process that included written affirmations or attestations from different law enforcement departments saying that they would not use the data for immigration purposes or to track folks getting abortions. They had a bunch of, they were not supposed to share the data or allow for folks to request reads that had anything to do with immigration. And they weren't supposed to share it with federal entities at all. It was always supposed to be for state and local. And so we weren't super happy. There were things we thought could be better, but we felt like we had safeguards, and the police had promised that these safeguards would be in place. So then fast forward to May of this year. Well, actually, let's take a pit stop. So in January of 2026, there is the Dayton Police Department tries to get an expansion of the contract to have, I think they have like 37 cameras now. And in order to do that under the ordinance, they had to go through a public hearing process. They had to explain how they had been using the data in the way that they had said they would in the policy. They said there had been no misuse of the data. They even had surveillance impact or annual reports that they had published in the past few years that said the data had not been misused. There had been no racial profiling, no sharing with immigration. And so they did that again. And the commission voted to expand the Flock contract because everything seemed to be going swimmingly. And they said they were following all of the safeguards. So then May 1st, our police chief decides to leave. He goes and pursues another job, Chief Afzal. And on his last day in office, he has a press conference and says, actually, whoops, all those safeguards that we said that we were going to be putting in place, that we have presented and told the community, the commission, that we've been putting in place, they're actually not in place right now. And we actually have had over 7,000 immigration inquiries. And we have had federal entities getting our immigration, or conducting immigration searches, including through Dayton's Flock database. But don't worry, the license plate readers are suspended. And so I was like pulled out of a meeting. We all just like immediately sprang into action. And that's sort of when we went from the Coalition on Public Protection, wanting transparency and accountability, to becoming Deflock Dayton, where we were like, these cameras cannot be trusted. And I'm telling this story for a lot of reasons, because I think people need to understand that safeguards are only as effective as the people who are enforcing them, which includes not only the police to do what they say they're going to do, but also the commission and those who are providing oversight. And unfortunately, our experience in Dayton was that was not an effective tool. And we were basically, and we later found out that actually none of those safeguards had ever been implemented at all. So we were never protecting our residents from the things that we had been promised they would be protected against, like immigration searches and abortion access safeguards. So we advocated. This group got together. We had a ton of people come to City Commission and testify. I don't believe they're on tonight, but one of our advocates did this brilliant move where they told us to all wear black, and then we all stood up, and it was just a room full of people there to oppose the cameras and the way we'd been let down by our leaders and our police department, and the cameras, and the fact that we don't know what this means. They're suspended. Like, does that mean they're still reading data and it's just not going to flock? And the goal was like, we just don't trust the police to implement this anymore. And so they put these trash bags up. Somebody was like, listen, if you all can put trash bags over the parking meters when you're doing construction on the streets, you can put trash bags over the flock cameras. So they have these bags over them now. And we have had commitments from the city, from one city commissioner in particular, who has been sort of working with us throughout the past few years, that they are going to take the cameras down. We are really struggling right now, I think, with the contract and the terms of the contract and how to get out of it. And I think that one of the things that I have learned, and I kind of come to the same conclusion where maybe you had started, Bryn, which is that the flock cameras I don't believe any amount of safeguards are going to actually prevent them from doing harm to the communities. I really don't. And I didn't always feel that way. But after this experience, I don't. And part of the reason for that is, as I mentioned earlier, they're only as valuable as the police and those who, where they're enforced and the oversight. If you don't have that, you don't have safeguards really. But the other thing is that Flock in particular, as a company, has really moved the needle, even since contracts have been initiated, on how much access they have to the data. I think some folks are going to talk about this later, but they actually had a pilot project with Border Patrol where they allowed Border Patrol to have an individual account. And so they were able to access over half of the 7,100 requests for information for immigration purposes were by federal immigration enforcement agencies. And so it's just, I think that Flock is not an honest vendor, maybe to state the obvious. And it is not the case that we can actually create enough safeguards that will actually protect our most vulnerable populations, because at the end of the day, Flock knows more about their product and the data than any of us ever will. And they are clearly finding ways to get around any of these safeguards that we are trying to put in place.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Katie. I think the Dayton example is what has informed a lot of our sort of perspectives on this. I mean, you all have been fighting this for so long and have faced such ridiculous sort of circumstances. And
I'm adding Kat because we're going to move on. I know we want to talk more about the immigration part, but that's going to come in a little bit later. But so, Bryn, I'm going to take you out and we're going to move on to Columbus.
All right. Hi, Kat. Welcome. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I'll ask you a few questions?
Yeah, my name is Kat Finneran, and I am with 614 Ice Watch, and I'm also with NOPE, which is No Ohio Anduril Plant, and they sort of tie in together here as far as AI surveillance tech is concerned.
All right. Well, thanks for participating. So can you talk a little bit about the work that you all have been doing around LPRs in Columbus?
Yeah. So I want to say when we first started thinking about Flock, it was like a post-2020 downtown Columbus beautification project. We saw some of the schematics for it, and we were like, wow, that is a lot of surveillance in this beautification project. And we noted that. And then when Anduril, which is an AI weapons manufacturer, first of its kind, drone manufacturer coming to the south side of Columbus, was announced, we sort of started to think through its role in the city. And one of its major products is something called Lattice, which really ties together everything from Flock, Ring, private security cameras, et cetera, to the surveillance used on the battlefield. And so we were trying to understand the scale of that problem. And it was in the midst of that last year when Operation Buckeye happened in December. And that was when we had a pretty big wave on the city of Columbus of ICE officers, with at least a little over 200 folks taken over the span of 3 or 4 days. And what happened there that really ignited us to flock is the sheer level of people getting picked up in vehicles. And we had a lot of video of people being targeted at their apartment complexes. And then days beforehand, and this has kind of been happening ever since, to be honest, where you'll see ICE agents show up with just one person and they just record all the license plates in the apartment complex in the parking lot, right? And then that's it. They get in their car and they go away, and we're like, what is going on here? And we started to also realize that some of the folks that seemed to be the most vulnerable to flock were folks with formerly having temporary protective status. So we were thinking through the forms that folks on TPS fill out when they want to have power of attorney for their car, which sort of gives the state a record of their license plate. And we just started to like think about this pipeline with Flock and ICE and the city and this network between all of these different agencies having these cameras. And we decided that in between the rapid response, we wanted to take on Flock as a way to maybe slow down this pipeline and make it harder for ICE to track and pick people up. And so yeah, I would say Operation Buckeye is the catalyst, and we don't have like a formal like in Columbus org for fighting flock. It's really a coalition of about 12 organizations, and we started pushing out public records requests, not just to Columbus, but New Albany and Springfield. And we had like Springfield told us they did not know how to get us the information that we asked for. So there was just a basic literacy there on even not knowing what how to like pull the public records request. And then Columbus outright denied it. New Albany outright denied it, citing an Ohio revised code that said, a recent one that said they did not have to give up the audit logs for the flock cameras, and which we're still sort of pretty curious about how they're utilizing this Ohio revised code. And so once we were denied our public records request, which at that point we had seen other cities be able to build solid campaigns off of those audit logs, and because we didn't have that big flashy headline, Columbus City Police had their cameras searched by immigration 9,000 times. We didn't have that to catalyze a strategy. We had to start holding these meetings with City Council, where we learned really quickly that the Columbus City Council have very little idea how this technology works. And they sort of soaked in all of our questions and all of our anxiety, and then they said that they were going to take the questions and bring them back to the Columbus City Police Department and come back to us with answers. Well, that was in early March, and we haven't had any answers yet. And we have been trying to figure out what our audit logs or what the state of that situation is, so that way we can one second. I have Newfoundlands. Trying to figure out what the state of those audits are, but it seems like the Columbus Police Department is doing it internally, and so those logs aren't going to be made public for us to go through unless some rethinking of that Ohio revised code happens. And so instead of actually getting answers to our questions, it sounds like they are just doing an internal investigation and then updating the laws. Like recently, they just came out and said they're no longer sharing information with counties in the state of Ohio that have 287G agreements or police departments with 287G agreements. But it would be very nice to have like some sort of public engagement with that process at the same time. And so no return on the audit yet. And we're seeing them do policy changes, but we're not exactly seeing like how this sausage is getting made. And I think the concern is they're going to have some sort of internal audit come out and be like, problem fixed, everything's fine. But we still have a lot of questions about what happened during Operation Buckeye and how much was our cameras were used during that, and how like liable to those losses the city were when they opted into these contracts that they had clearly did very little research around. And here we are this week on the eve of Haitian TPS was just lost. And by Friday, it looks like Haitians on TPS are going to lose their ability to hold their driver's license. And so here we're going to be in a situation again where you're going to have thousands of newly, unfairly undocumented Haitian community members driving around possibly on license plates that are going to set them up to be deported. And we have no transparency with the city of Columbus around the state of Flock, actually. And we have this internal investigation that has been pending for a while. And we're just at the edge of this crisis, and we can't get them to email us back.
Hmm.
We can't, we're really struggling to get even the aides to email us back. And they're about to go on their break at the same time, right? So their summer break is coming up. They've only got one more city council meeting. And we really are at the precipice of a huge risk and a huge influx of possibly, I don't want to fearmonger on ice waves or anything, but it's possible that this has been one of the things we've been waiting for. And yeah, so we're really just like stuck in this limbo now, and this really intense anxiety around what is to come. And the city council's just complete abdication of not even like doing their own research, but even being willing to fully talk to us about this stuff publicly.
Yeah.
And now they're about to go on break, right when everything's about to hit the fan.
Hey, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And thank you, Katie, also. I'm going to bump in the last three people. I just want to comment that you see how much work that, individuals and small organizations are doing, to track this stuff, to follow this stuff, to pay attention to this stuff. So, hey, Jona, do you want to introduce yourself? And I'm going to keep adding people.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Jona Hilario. I share pronouns. I'm a co-director at OPAWL, Building a API Feminist Leadership. And I'll
And
let
Lili?
you, Lili, introduce yourself.
Hi, folks. My name is Lili Baiman. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Columbus, Ohio, and I'm here with a national org, Defend and Recruit, that supports immigrants' rights and helping build ICE defense all across the country within our communities, as well as the School Strap ICE campaign, where we're working with local, not just local, but universities across the country to get them to drop their contracts with Flock. And I'll pass
Awesome.
it to
Thank
Joey.
you, Joey. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Joey. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. I work with a group called the People's Justice Project. I'm on the leadership squad, and we're doing very grassroots organization right now. We are working to educate the public on what Black is, and we are collecting signatures to take them to City Council to tell them we want to end the contract as soon as possible.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Kat, you may have specific questions, but we want to hear, I'll let you go ahead, Kat.
Yeah, I know Lili and Joey, you guys have both been pretty focused on the schools. And I wanted to ask, a lot of these campuses are moving towards or have at least claimed to be interested in some sort of sanctuary campus setup. And I'm curious, like for those campuses that claim that and are investing in Flock, how does that contradiction, how is that showing up in conversations with them, or how does that logic break down?
Yeah, I mean, I can share what we've been hearing. A lot of us have been organizing, like I've been organizing in the immigrants' rights world for the last 21 years. Over time, a lot of these universities, especially in more progressive parts of the country, have named themselves sanctuary campuses. We feel in a way, just like in blue cities, it's falsely leading students to believe that they are safe on these campuses or have more safety than students where it's not a sanctuary school. Yes, and I see someone's adding, I think there were some questions around that I'm seeing some questions pop up around that. And what we're going back and saying now is there is no such thing as a sanctuary campus where flock exists. And I think that has shaken a lot of our universities, a lot of campuses across the country, in places like Berkeley and New York City, where they thought, we have a really comprehensive sanctuary policy, we're keeping our students safe. But it turns out that there's flock cameras all around campuses, and that as long as that exists, what is there is no longer really keeping folks safe. And so a lot of these campuses are launching another campaign saying, yes, great that you put these things in writing, great that we call ourselves a sanctuary campus. It's not real, and it is providing a false sense of security for folks, and we need you to end these contracts with Flock now. And I will say that there was no place where we could find out what campuses had Flock. It took students doing a request to their university for us to find out that information, bring that data together, and literally students basically did information requests across 130 universities across the country to figure out if there was a flock agreement or not.
Wow. Jona, can you tell us about your concerns about flock?
Yeah, thank you.
Jackie?
I feel like multiple speakers have brought up a couple of the concerns, specifically around immigration and also around reproductive justice. So those are the two main concerns that our organization has with Flock as well. Just to expound on it, we've heard that there really hasn't been any way for Flock or for cities to control how the data gets shared with ICE. I think that's something that I I want people to understand is no matter what the cities say that they want to happen with their data, it doesn't seem that Flock cares. And also, other than Flock not caring about that, it also seems like their data is super hackable. I don't know if y'all have seen multiple people on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, just being able to hack information from Flock. So of course that has huge impacts on vulnerable communities, not just immigrants, but also like folks seeking abortions, as Gary mentioned earlier. I think the other one I also want to highlight is we just heard that the FBI is interested in purchasing data from Flock and other similar organizations or similar companies. So we know that this administration is already redefining counterterrorism to include, going to a protest that they don't agree with, or political speech that they don't agree with. Even I just heard them characterizing like anti-AI advocacy as a national security threat. So we can just imagine what the federal government can do with this information that our cities are building for them. So I think I know we don't want to scaremonger but we want people to demand more from our cities, especially when your city says they're pro-immigrant. Like I'm from Columbus, and I have to admit I wasn't super aware of this issue until the city, passed all these resolutions about, oh, we're pro-immigrant, we're gonna protect our immigrants from ICE. And then on the one hand, like build this infrastructure for our immigrants to be surveilled. So we need to, like what Kat is saying, we need to find a way to make our voices heard. And I'm so grateful for all the amazing organizers here tonight. And I hope us folks in Columbus can learn from the examples of our comrades up in Cleveland and in Dayton, because there is so much to be done. But I am so encouraged by the number of folks that are here tonight wanting to learn about this issue. So yeah.
Kat I'm sorry, I'm not spotlighted and I'm jumping in and it's terrible. I apologize, but I wanted to ask Joey a question. So you've been like out in the community. When you go out, do you feel like people have heard about Flock? Do they understand what it's about and why it's a threat? or are you really educating them about it?
Oh, that's a great question. Like many people here have stated, I'll echo the fact that I wasn't aware of what Flock was until we came up with the campaign. Ours is called Safety Not Surveillance, and so that is what we've been doing. I started working with the People's Justice Project last summer during a fellowship where we learned how to door knock. And so as we're learning how to educate the public, one thing I have noticed is that a lot of people are unaware of what's going on. And the few who have heard of it are very educated and very fired up. They said, absolutely, we can barely get the pitch out before they're like, give me your clipboard so I can sign to say that we don't want this in our communities. But for the folks who are unaware, I would say 95 to 99% of them are opposed to having the flock cameras in our communities. And they're shocked and surprised that they're there. They're not just at the light posts. They're set up in parking lots, like we're saying. So like a lot of our East Side neighborhood where I live, they're in Kroger parking lots, Walmart parking lot, Lowe's parking lots. We were even door knocking about 2 weeks ago where there was a flat camera on the light post facing into people's homes. And so when you kind of put those pieces together, they are putting together that yes, there's more cameras going up, and they can believe that we are being surveilled. And we use that piece of immigration to say yes, these are being used to track immigrants and other vulnerable populations, and eventually it's going to be used to track us. And so that usually is the hook to get people in to understand how serious this is, how pervasive it is, and how important it is that they join and just say, hey, we want to support your campaign. We originally went off, I think, to get 200 signatures. We're up to almost 400. I don't know if we're going to up it again, but just to kind of speak on the things that we've been doing at the grassroots level. We have done door knocking campaigns, but we've been more successful when we have gone to targeted events. So this past weekend, we went out to Comfest. And so folks who are in that type of community are already invested and want to be a part of uplifting the community. We have in the past gone to the African American Wellness Walk and other festivals around town. So we seem to have a lot of success there. And some tactics that we use would be approaching people who are standing in line. They're already there. So that way you can kind of get your spiel out, your pitch out, and then kind of get more groups involved to say, hey, who here has heard of this? And then you get more of like the crowd participation. So
That's awesome.
really good job of educating folks in a fast pace.
That's fantastic. Okay, I am going to remove everybody's spotlight so that everybody can be in again. And sorry, it just takes a second. And then if folks have any specific questions, or if there are things, Catherine, that you think we definitely need to, one more spotlight to remove. There we go. That we need to ask. Otherwise, I do have calls to action and resources. I want people to know that in the resources that we're going to send out, not only are there news articles to read, but there's links to all of the organizations that all of these folks work with. And there's links to calls to action. There's links to websites that have, ways to track flock and things like that. But I also want to call attention to the fact that there are other organizations that people are forming, like there's one in Upper Arlington that has started out, and maybe there are additional ones. So if you're on this call and you have started an organization about flock in your community, please feel free to put the information in the chat. So anybody have any questions for each other or final comments that you want to make? Catherine, are there things in the Q&A box that we haven't answered that we need to answer?
So one of the things that I noticed is there are lots and lots of questions that we did not get to. And I think that's, this is Flocks 101, and I would encourage people to read the resources. I do think people have a particular worry about Springfield. And what we know about flock cameras that are there, and also are there ways that we can help folks, even if we're not close to Springfield, are there ways that we can help?
Katie, do you have an answer, being kind of maybe more closely connected with Springfield? Are there things that we can do right now? I know
Yeah, so
yeah, go ahead.
there was a good article. put it in the answers to one of the questions in the Springfield News Sun a few weeks ago about flock cameras in Springfield. There are 38 of them, more than even in Dayton. And absolutely, I mean, I think it was maybe Kat who was talking about the fact that a lot of the Haitian community there is, because they have been documented, have cars in their names, their license plates are easily traceable to their identity. And all it takes is for somebody to be tracked going to Kroger every morning at 7 a.m. or XYZ school to drop their kid off, and ICE knows exactly where to find them. So it's very worrisome. I also want to shout out, I mean, I won't do by name, but there are some folks on the call tonight from the Springfield community who are actually going to be working on this initiative. And so I don't know, if there's a good way to get them in touch with some of the great brain trust here, but they're very much aware of this problem and are actually going to be testifying before City Commission very soon, asking them to take a better look at the flock cameras to protect the residents.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're going to send a follow-up email with the slides and the recording. And if anybody has any questions or wants to be put in touch with somebody else, or if you want to just say, I know, for instance, somebody said they are starting a group in Brunswick. Well, if you can email me and give me that information and you're willing to share that with others, your information with others, we would certainly appreciate that. Any other questions right now? I know I'm sharing my screen. I'm getting back here. I just wanted to just call attention to these calls to action. There's a Columbus one from Common Cause, and another Columbus one and an OSU one from People's Justice Project. There's a couple of Cleveland-based ones from Flock No Cleveland. And the flock situation in Springfield is definitely, and in Columbus, is definitely urgent. And then, these are some resources that we wanted to just call out. The Deflock Me, which you can find the flock cameras in your area. And you can also, if there are cameras that aren't on there, you can add them. You can take a look and see if your community is considering adding flock. Information from ACLU, from Defend and Recruit, and then a pretty awesome slide presentation put together by an individual, and a resource link. And we will be sending this out. Any other questions from panelists, like to each other, or final words that you want to say?
Sure, I'll go.
Okay.
I'm kind of new to the organizing world. This is my second year being outside, canvassing, door knocking. I would say join us, find somebody in this room and link up. The more information we can share, the better. As we are outside, we are recruiting people into our organization to help us to build out that work. And also tell your stories, be yourselves. I think that is one of the most powerful tools that we have been using, is telling folks about our experiences, sharing the information that we have, and making that human to human connection, because that's what we're here for, to make the world a better place. And so definitely get your friends, tell a friend, and get the information out there. Even a shared post is more education and more knowledge. So that's what I would encourage everybody to do today as far as an actionable item that we can move on today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Kat.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that with all of this in mind, this makes driving around in personal vehicles particularly concerning, which is to say that the safest way to travel if you're undocumented is public transport, is getting on your city buses. Whatever sort of city transport you have is going to be the best thing for you. And if you're an immigration org or looking to support immigration orgs, doing what you can to fundraise for bus passes, and even doing bus stop, community defense, because it is going to be the buses, which we have yet to see in a while, at least ICE get on the public buses, at least in Columbus, Ohio. And they only got on for like an hour in Minneapolis during Operation Metro Surge. And so one of the safest places for travel is going to be public transport.
Good point. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Last words? I know what Gary's last words are, which is that the technology is only going to get stronger. We've got to fight this. We got to fight this now because the technology is getting like scary, scary smart, and so we got to come together and you know, fight this now.
Actually, Mia, my last words were you're right. You've heard me rant about this stuff before, but actually, my last words are to once again thank the co-panelists for describing their work and what they're doing on the local levels. I don't use this word lightly. You're my heroes. You're talking about how you haven't been involved in these issues before. You didn't know about it. And what did you do? You started doing something about it. And all of us who do advocacy or activism hear all the time, one person can't make a difference. Oh, you're just spinning your wheels kind of thing. But here you have actual people at the local level making change in their community on a crucial issue. So I hope everybody is as energized by this program tonight as I am.
Thank you, Gary. And thank you so much to everybody. Really appreciate it. And I appreciate the incredibly engaged and, curious and engaged and informed audience who have been blowing up the chat from the very first minute. So we appreciate that very much as well. So thank you all and have a wonderful rest of your evening. And let's go out there and fight the man.